Well, welcome. Um, my name is Rosemary. It's nice to meet you all via Zoom or see you all again. I have some familiar faces here. um, so thanks for signing up for this virtual workshop. If you were unsure how to pronounce the name of tonight's activity, it is a do a do. I sound very French, right? Sweetheart bookbinding. Not to be confused, sometimes folks call it a dos a dos, so it's kind of more like a Spanish sort of version. It is a French binding, so do a do is the correct way to say it. But I also like how it works in the Spanish because do a do in French means back to back. And the book that we are creating tonight is a book that is obviously back to back. They share a backing. And so you have one book, another book, back to back, just as if you were standing up against somebody back to back. But dos a dos in Spanish is just like 2 by 2 something, or 2 to 2, and it's, you know, 2 books. So I feel like that kind of works as well, which is really so you should have your materials that you received in the mail. I know Kristen got hers okay. I hope you guys did too. Carol or Sabina. I still don't know which one you are, so let me know what your name is. So I
I got it.
Okay, good. Are you Carol or Sabina? I just want to make sure.
I'm Carol.
Carol. Oh, okay. Hello, Carol. Just want to make sure I
Ken Care.
just want to make sure I address you properly. So thanks, Carol. Yes. So the materials you received. I believe you both chose purple for your cover, which was cool. Sabina had chosen red, so I thought it was neat that out of all the colors, you both chose the same. I'll be using the green cover today. So in your materials kit, you should have received one large, what size is this? 15 inches long by 8 inches tall cover board. This is a really nice metallic clean paper. And as a little surprise, I don't know if you guys were expecting it, but I provided you with 2 different kinds of paper, both text weight, but one that was lined. So a pack of lined paper of 8 sheets for one side of the book. And a pack of 8 papers, again, text weight, that's just blank. So this could be used for sketching, anything really, drawing, or if you prefer to write lists without lines, sometimes I like that. Now feel free, as we're making this book, it is yours. You can do what you like with it. So my intention was for one side to be all lined paper and the other to be all blank paper, but feel free to mix and match and do what you like. Either side could be half and half if you want. Totally up to you. So that's it for the papers, our cover and our 2 text papers. You should have also received some tools. So we have our bone folder. Yours might look a little different than mine, but they'll all operate the same. So we have our bone folder. This is a specialty bookbinding tool used to fold and score paper. We'll be doing both. And you might have used a bone folder before, so you'll be a pro at this, but I'll definitely go over how to use the tool, just in case it's been a while. And all, yours again might look a little different than mine, but they all work the same. I have bad dad jokes and puns, I'm so sorry. But this tool will be used to poke our sewing stations or the holes into our binding in order to stitch up our book. And of course, a bookbinding needle. Traditionally, bookbinding needles were the, it's a little hard to see here, and I'm going to switch when we get down into the making into more of our book cam. You might see that up there for some fine detail. But traditional bookbinding needles are flat all the way through so that the eye of the needle doesn't bump out. In a sewing needle, that might bump out a bit. But we want our bookbinding needles to be nice and thin, all the same length so that they don't create an even larger hole when binding. Let's see what else. To go along with the needle, you should have 2 lengths of thread. I gave you guys different colors just for fun, so I hope you like the colors I curated for you in the kit. I thought that that would look nice with the purple. Today I chose blue and yellow for my green cover. Thought it'd be a nice sort of springish color, I suppose. Although I believe the colors for you folks are a little more valentine-y or a little rich. So this is a waxed linen thread. It's a typical bookbinder's thread. Bookbinders like to use wax thread because it glides easier through the paper. It doesn't snag, it won't rip the paper, and they create really nice knots when we're done. And the beeswax, that's since it's wax, the beeswax kind of holds that knot together since it's sticky. It's also really nice because you can thread the needle very quickly. And then let's see what else. You should have received 2 book clips. They're literally just like small binder clips. And then some mat board pieces. These are fun holographic pieces. Feel free to use them for collage work afterwards if you like. And this will just help to protect our papers and our book covers when we use the book clips to hold everything in together when we sew. Alrighty. On your end, things that I did not include in the kit is a pencil or some sort of writing utensil to mark where we're going to pop our sewing stations, scissors, just at the very end, a ruler. If you don't have a ruler, I also included these fun paper rulers that I made, so we know exactly where we're going to pop our sewing stations. Just a little handy dandy trick there. And a cutting mat or some junk mail, magazines, old papers to use to protect our work surface when we're punching with the awls. So with all that, before we get started, again, my name is Rosemary. It's a pretty small class tonight, so feel free to call out and ask if you have like any questions at all. You can ask me to repeat a step, go back, explain something a little bit more in depth, or just tell a funny story. It's a nice communal space to make books together too. And I'm really glad that you guys took some time out of your evening to make books together. We'll go around, we'll say your name and maybe something a little bit about yourself. So again, Rosemary, I'll repeat that for like the 50 millionth time. Usually I'm bad at introducing myself, so I'm also bad at remembering what words to say. But I'm the education director at Book Arts here and also a teaching artist. So I lead a lot of workshops in bookmaking, hand printing, whether that's letterpress printing or screen printing, in the physical space and also virtually, which is pretty nifty. And let's see. I've been making books for quite a few years. I think, I don't know, quite a few. Although I learned the most about book arts when I interned here at Book Arts in college, which was really eye-opening to actually learn that making books is actually an art form and not just, you know, books at the library, which are beautiful and cool. And I always loved reading, especially in middle school. But realizing that the book is an art form and you can create it yourself and turn it into something that can be on display or just appreciate the beauty in the making of the book, which I really enjoy. And I hope you enjoy tonight too. So yell out, introduce yourself, safe space.
I'm Kristen. I don't know. I like art. And I like doing these classes with you, so that's why I signed up for another one.
Yeah. Which class did you take with us before? I don't remember.
I don't, no, I did the Hump Day, how do you think? But then I did another book. It was the one, no, not leather.
Oh, Was it the matchstick book? I think?
Yes, thank you. Yes, that's what it was. Yeah, I liked that a lot. So I wanted to do it again because it was fun. I wanted to do the one in January, but it was my brother's birthday, so I didn't do it that day because I wasn't sure if we were doing something with him that night. So we did this one,
Cool.
and I'm
Well,
excited.
tonight.
Thanks.
Carol, do you want to share a little something about your experience with bookmaking or anything? Feel free.
This is the first time I've um, made a book like this. I have done a little bit of work in book repair and book cleaning, but that's about it.
Wow, that's really neat. It's hardcover, softcover books.
Usually hardcover, just re-gluing and fixing.
Cool. Interesting. Yeah, here at Book Arts, we get a lot of folks from the community ask us if we like find commission books or fix up old books, and we always refer them to members. So it's really interesting whenever we hear somebody who fixes up books. And I give you a lot of credit for working with a lot of times old and fragile things and making them beautiful again. So that's neat. If you have any tips as we are making our book tonight, let me know. Ready to get started?
Oh yeah.
Perfect. Okay. Sometimes I go off on a tangent, so I'm sorry. All right. So I'll be toggling in and out of this main screen here of me and the book cam, which I'm just going to move this one. So I'm using another camera, which is an iPad, so hence the long view. If you're on a phone, it might not make too much of a difference, but on the computer, it will look a little shrinked. But hopefully you'll be able to see some more detail over here. All right, just gonna pop back up to my face here. That move for you guys? Just want to make sure it's okay on your end.
Yep.
Okay, perfect. If at any time you can't hear me or see me okay, just speak up, let me know. Want you to make some nice books. The first thing we'll do is start by scoring our cover paper. There's really no front or back side. You can kind of tell the back side's a little flatter than the front of the paper. It might be a bit shinier, but either side is fine. We are going to score this in 2 places, and that will become our front cover, our back cover, and our other front cover. Do you both have rulers tonight with you?
Yep.
If you don't have a ruler with you, you can always use the paper ruler that I provided as well. It's not going to work as a great straight edge, but it will definitely help you measure. Try to be very precise with these measurements. But if you do have a ruler, you'll need that and a writing utensil right now. So I'm going to pop over to the book cam. All right. So I have my cover here. Everything's backwards for me, so if I'm like, where's this going? That's why. Okay. So our paper is 15 inches in length. And each cover is going to be 5 inches wide. Hence 5 times 3 is 15. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a mark. Put this on. I'm going to put the 15 here. You can start at 0. I'm going to mark it right there. This is in red. It might be a little hard for you. And then at the top 2. 5. So marking 5 inches at the top and at the bottom here. What you can do if you want is use your drawing utensil and draw a line. I'm going to do that so you can see exactly where I'm going to mark, but you do not have to do this. I just like to use a nice bright pencil on the creases so that y'all can see what I'm doing over here. Sometimes it's a little hard for the computer screen. But again, you don't need to mark this. There's my line. So this is going to be where we are going to make our crease mark. This paper is a little thick, so I wouldn't recommend just folding it over. It's not going to make a really nice crease. What I do recommend is using your bone folder as a tool. And you'll notice your bone folder should come to a point at some end. That point is really nice to crease paper. We won't have to do this with our insert papers because it's nice and thin, but as this is thicker, we'll want to. So I'm gonna take my ruler, my straight edge, line it up against that 5-inch mark. I'm gonna take the point of my bone folder, press down at the top of my paper, and smooth all the way down. You kind of want to use some muscle. You don't have to be afraid of really breaking this paper because I feel like part of it's made out of like a plastic material or something, which is kind of crazy. And I usually like to do it a couple times if the paper is really thick. What this does is it forms a little dent in the paper, a little crease. It actually compresses the fibers of the paper together to make it a little bit easier to fold our sheet. It's a little bit of a nuanced crease here, so we won't be able to see that too well over the computer screen, but I can literally take my paper now and fold that really nice. And then to make that fold actually stay down, I'll take my bone folder and either pressing it down and smoothing, we can smooth that fold down. Or I also like to use my bone folder sometimes like straight up like this and smooth. If it feels better for you, you can also use the pointed part here, press down and smooth. It kind of gives you a little more control over where you're going. So I know we did all that just to fold a measly little piece of paper in half, or sort of in half. But I like to make sure that y'all know the possibilities of what you can do with the bone folder. What we're going to do now is take the same paper, we'll flip it over, and now we'll fold this flap here to the crease. I just want you to make sure to take a look. So we're folding two opposite valleys. That makes sense. So here was my original fold. I'm going to flip that over. Now I'm going to take the flap and fold it back to the crease. We can fold if we wanted to, but look at that. Not great. So what I want to do is take my ruler again, measure my 5 inches. On the back side here. Make a mark. Bottom. And on the top. Draw that line. Again, I'm going to draw the line so you can see my fold, but you don't have to. Here's my one folded side. Here's my crease line. Now I'll take my ruler again. Use my bone folder and score that crease. And again, I'm going to run it through a couple times. Now this time I'm going to bend it back. So again, forming those two opposite valley folds. One valley here, one valley down here. And use my bone folder to move this up and down, make sure that's really nice and creased. All right. So you should end up with something like this. It looks like a zero, whatever you want it to be really. But you'll notice that you have your shared backing and your do-a-do book on either side. Any questions, comments, concerns? Sometimes I go a little slow, so I'm sorry. Like, yeah, I got that fold already. All right. If not, we're going to set our cover to the side for now. And we're going to pay attention to our inside text block papers. All right. So like I had said before, I'm going to use all the blank pages on one side of my, or in one book, and then all my lined papers on the other. But totally up to you. However you want to make your book is fine. I'll start with my lined papers. And honestly, all we're going to do, this will be a nice little meditative time here, is take our papers and fold them in half. Now, sometimes when folks take a workshop with me, they're like, how come we can't just take all the papers and fold them in half? You can do that, but it's not really going to create a nice crease. It's going to create something that looks more like a U shape than a V shape. And we want our papers to stack really nicely. That'll make our book sit a little flatter, look a little bit more professional. So I'm going to take each sheet one by one and fold them in half. And I will switch back to the book cam. So you can see I'm taking my paper, lining up the edges, and then just using my bone folder. With these, I like to start in the middle, but totally up to you. I find that starting in the middle to make my fold really helps keep my creases in line. And here is one folded page. Now, one folded page, when you are creating a book, this is called a folio, F-O-L-I-O, folio. Technically, this could be a book as well. You figure it has a front, insides, and a back cover. But we are going to stack all 8 of our folios together tonight to create one signature book. So a signature is just a grouping of folios together that is then bound into our book. So these books will be one signature. So there's my first page down. I'm just going to continue folding all my pages in half. And if you'd like to, you can do fold all 16 pages. Right, I believe I give you guys 8 per book. Folding.
Yeah, Rosemary,
Yes, Carol.
my audio keeps going in and out.
Oh, okay. Let's see. What, did you miss a certain part? I don't. Kristen, is the audio going in and out on your end? I just want to make sure if it's an issue with me or not.
It's okay with me.
Well, you know what I'll do, Carol? I'll make sure to talk a little bit louder too. I know sometimes I talk on the lower end. And was there anything that you had missed that I could go over? Feel free to, Carol, to utilize the chat box. I am monitoring that as well. So if you have any questions, that's easier to ask there, please do. And I'm sorry about that audio issue. If it helps to, we will be sending a recorded version of this as well, probably tomorrow. So you can rewatch and make sure you got all the steps correctly. And you can always reach out to me too via email or give me a call here at Book Arts and I can help walk you through things. I know technical issues are always a problem. Never fun. Sorry about that, Carol. I know you, and you are still frozen on my end too. Well, at least your video. So sometimes I've learned from folks too that if you turn off your camera, the audio may come through a bit better. So just a little tip I've learned from being a part of Zoom workshops and meetings. Continue to fold all 6. And Carol, since your audio's going in and out, feel free to always ask me to repeat a step too. We got quite a bit of time together tonight, so no worries. I have a feeling Kristen's patient as well, so we'll get through it. Back to the putting that in the chat, what I had said in case you missed it. All right, I'm on my last paper. Kristen, how you doing with your folding?
I'm good. I'm done.
Alrighty. So now we have folded, I assume, Carol, you have to all 16 of our text block pages. Now each is folded in an individual folio. Oh. I didn't replace my spotlight. Each is folded in an individual folio. But what we want to do is stack these into a one signature booklet. So what I'm going to do is take each page, open it up. I want to teach certain sort of bookbinding to kids of like a little bird. But I just like to take the folios, open them up, and stack them on top of each other. We're going to do this to all 8. I'll go to the book hand and then you can see that probably a little bit better there. Go open it up. Like that. I'm starting with my lined paper, but it doesn't really matter. Whichever one. So here I have my one signature with all of my lined papers, all 8 of my lined folios. And see how those go really nicely and become a V instead of that U shape that we were looking at earlier. So that's going to really help create a really nice binding there. I'm going to set this signature aside and I will stack all 8 of my blank paper folios. And give them a little jog. All right. And again, there's our nice V. All right. So right now we have our 2 text blocks. What I want to do is just choose one. So I'm just going to grab this blank paper side. I'm going to set aside my other signature for now. We're going to just work with the one. We are going to bring our cover paper back into play here. Open it up. And in one of our valley folds here, so in this guy, I'm going to take and stack my one signature text block. So this becomes our first book or one of our back-to-back books.
Wait, does it matter which one you do? Like the, okay, thank you.
No, yeah, because technically this is a bit symmetrical. So no matter the way you fold it, it'll be the same.
Okay.
Yeah, it's really up to you, however you'd like.
Making sure. Overthinking it.
Oh, no worries, you're okay. It can be a little confusing. What you will want to decide though is since you have 2 different, this is a little going a little too far in the future right now, but since we have 2 different color threads, maybe you want the blue to be with the blank papers and the yellow to be with the lined papers, depending how you had separated those folios or those signatures.
Mm-hmm.
Blue, more creative for my sketching side, and yellow feels more, I don't know, office-like for my list to do's. I don't know. Oh, use whatever thing you'd like.
Okay.
But we're not quite to that part yet. What we want to do, I'm gonna flip my book this way. So here's the edge. What we want to do is grab our book clips and grab our mat board pieces or little cardstock pieces. And we are going to clip this text block signature to our cover. What I try to do is notice how there's this back flap here. When I'm making this book, I like to just clip the signature to the backing, not to the other cover, just as a way to differentiate. But I'm going to clip, I gotta move to this book is a little too large in the book plan. So here's my open book. Here's the back cover, the shared backing. I'm going to take my clips and clip on the left and right sides. And to do that, I take my booklet, open it up. It's like a little Pac-Man. Got a little bite to it. And I take the mat board, one on the front, one on the back, and then flip. So utilizing that mat board so that the clip doesn't make like a funny squiggle up onto the cover, like that. And if you'd like, you can also tuck them here so that they won't get in the way when we hang. There's something gaps aside. Mat board there, mat board on the other side. And you could, if you wanted to, clip this side too. I prefer to always clip the bottom of the book since I'll be working with it this way. But it's whatever you feel comfortable. I'll switch over to the book cam so you can see that on the table here. All right, just like this. Okay.
Hi, Gabby.
Where'd my ruler go? Now, once we have that all clipped, is everyone good with that stuff? I want to make sure. Okay. Carol, how we doing over there? If I don't hear anything, I assume good. So please feel free to yell out if you have any questions. Stop me mid-sentence. All right. Now what we're going to do, since our book is temporarily bound together, is we are going to make our markings for where we're going to punch our holes or our sewing stations. Now I'm going to use the ruler that I had given you guys, the paper ruler, because it has the little stars on it, but feel free to use your own ruler too. The ruler that I gave you is exactly about 8 inches long, I believe. And we are going to make 5 marks because this is a 5-hole pamphlet stitch binding. There are various types of bindings. For a signature stitch, I'm sorry, for a single signature booklet, pamphlet stitch is one of the most popular bindings. The simplest version is a 3-color pamphlet. Oh gosh, I can't say words. The simplest binding is a 3-hole pamphlet stitch. But tonight we are utilizing a 5-hole pamphlet stitch. It's just a bit more decorative and adds a little bit more durability to the stitch since there's more thread holding everything together. So right along our crease here, I'll mark my crease just so you can see. You don't have to do this. I just want you to be able to see where my crease line is, the center of my first book here. So along this line, I'm going to make 1 mark. And if you're using a pencil, something small is fine, just something that you're going to remember where it is later. I'm going to make 1 mark here at the 4-inch mark. I'm also going to make a mark at 1 inch. So that's 1 inch from the edge of my binding. And at the 7-inch mark, which is 1 inch from the end of my binding, or the end of my book, because our book is 8 inches long. And then we're going to half the distance between the middle and our marks on the end. So halfway between 1 and 4 is 2.5. And then halfway between 4 and 7 is 5.5. So we make those nice and even. When I'm doing 5-hole pamphlet stitch, I prefer to make the spaces in between my binding even. But after this workshop, you will have the tools to be able to make your own pamphlet stitch books. So feel free to experiment with a range of measurements in between. What I don't suggest is just having a little bit in the center, because then if you have no thread or anything on the edges, your text block's gonna move. All right, so I'm gonna get my ruler out of the way. And now we are ready to punch our holes. Scrunch that down a bit. So you're gonna grab your awl, and we're gonna use this to poke the sewing stations. I like to use my awl. Yours might be a little more bulbous on the top, I think, but they kind of work in different ways. So, or all in the same way, rather. I like to take the end and put that in the palm of my hand and use more of a jabbing motion to punch the holes into my book. Since yours is a little more rounded at the top, maybe, you know, that way is fine. What you don't want to do is like press down and be, you're going to end up with a hole in your table. So I'm going to do this in a way that's more comfortable for me. I have my book. I'll do the profile here first. Well, actually, let me switch this way. I'm going to take my book. If this is the tabletop here, I'm right-handed, so I'll use the awl in my right hand. I'm going to have my book at a 90-degree angle. And then I'm going to use the point of my awl right where I've marked my sewing stations. And I'm going to, now this is horrible because I'm doing this in the air, do this on your table. I'm going to push the awl. And notice how there's a little bit of needle there. I'm going to push it a little bit more through. We don't want to push it too far because then that's going to create a really large hole in our paper. We just want something small enough for our needle and thread to go through. I'm going to push that all through. Pull back out. See the awl in the, here's the tip. Out. And see how these book clips really help hold everything together so that the hole in the paper is lined up with the hole in the cover. I'll switch back to my book cam. Let's see if we can. Pretty self-explanatory once you get that one. And this is why I suggest having a cutting mat or an old magazine or something underneath, because sometimes folks get a little excited and then they might poke at themselves or their table that they're working on. And it doesn't really matter the order that you press your sewing or poke your sewing station holes. Go. Back up. So I'm using the awl in my right hand, but then using my left hand as a support for the book. So it's not just flying. And then that one. Okay, and last one for me. Awesome. So here I have my 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You might notice that there's a little bit of like extra paper kind of flaking out. That's okay. We can always push that down later with the binding, and the thread should cover it up a bit. All right. While we finish that, make sure this computer is plugged. Forgot to charge your phone. Bug. Sorry, friends. Okay. There we are. I didn't realize how fast it died. 100%. I was on.
Do you have?
With my
Alaga hakim aka read back to the cat to my cat. Chibi aka. Ago hakum aka. Ago hakim aka oga. Behind aka Mikey.
Carol, it sounds like you have a helper.
What you got? You go okay. And me a car. Why? You all got an old girl.
So let me know if you have any questions or
We'll
need
give it later, okay?
Yeah. I really need
The more the merrier.
I want to come up back.
All right. So now that our 5 sewing stations, these holes are punched, what we're going to do is grab our needle. Now threading a bookbinding needle is
There'll be holes on it.
than than threading like a sewing needle because here. If usually anytime I've sewn, I double up the thread when sewing, and my needle sits here. But with bookbinding, what we want to do is thread our needle. Again, hopefully that waxed end will help glide through the needle. So I threaded the needle, and I just want to leave a little bit of a tail. So, I don't know, a couple inches. And the nice thing about the wax thread is if you just give it a little tug, that kind of creates a V in the thread. And it won't, even if I pull the end here, it's not really gonna budge, which is really nice. Sometimes I'll twist it, kind of hold that thread together. The wax sort of acts as a binding to hold the thread to the needle. We want to just use one single strand of thread because we don't need the holes in the book to be any larger than they have to be. That's going to compromise the strength of the paper. Plus we're going to go in and out of a few holes. So we want to make sure that we're not creating something really chunky on the binding. If you prefer, you could knot this to the needle, but then that might create a very kind of bump towards the top, and it might be a little harder to glide through the paper. So now my thread is on, leaving a couple inches, just about the size of my palm or so. And we are ready to stitch. So I'll pop back down to the book cam and we'll get started. All right. Move it this way. Let's see. Okay. So this is a symmetrical stitch. So if you're confused with me going left or right, just choose a side and you should be fine. But it all starts with this middle sewing station here. So on the inside of my book, I like to start my pamphlet stitches on the inside of my book so that the final knot or tie is on the inside of my binding. Sometimes bookmakers choose to start on their front cover, and then they end up with a knot or a tie on their cover spine. It's really just a preference of the bookbinder. So I'm going to start by taking my needle and thread and going through this first middle sewing station here. Pull through. I'm going to open my book back up again so you can see how much of a tail I'm going to leave. I like to take the tail and just set it underneath one of my book clips here. Just like that. Kind of hold it in. So it's about a 3-4 inch tail. The thread itself is approximately 24 inches, which is 3 times the length of our spine. That's usually about a good measurement of the amount of thread you'd need to bind a 5 signature, a 5 hole pamphlet stitch, 1 signature book. All right, so now that I have this going through the center, I'm going to flip back to the front of my book, my cover, which is where my needle and thread are poking out of the sewing station. What I'm going to do is choose either side, doesn't matter, left or right, whichever. I'm going to, I'll pick this side here. So on the sewing station or the hole directly next to that middle sewing station, on the cover, I'm going to push my needle through. On the inside of the book now, you'll see where that needle and thread are poking out. Grab that and pull. And I'm going to pull that until there becomes a simple stitch right on my cover paper. So you'll see where the yellow overlaps that red line. So this is a simple stitch. All right. On that same side, the last sewing station in that row, I'm going to take my needle and thread on the inside of the book, push through that last sewing station here. See? On the cover of my book, I'm going to pull, and this actually creates a simple stitch now on the inside of my book, right here. All right. So on the cover here, I have this gap between my last sewing station and this other sewing station next to it that we had gone into. We're going to make one simple stitch to fill this gap here. So I'm going to take my needle and thread, and on the cover, I'm just going to poke through. Be careful when you do this that you don't poke through the thread itself. It's not the end of the world, but. And it might take a little bit of jostling because the angle at which you poked the awl through could be the angle at which the needle needs to poke through. So there we go. So I'm going to pull my needle and thread until I have another simple stitch right here. So now there's 2 simple stitches in a row. All right. Back on the inside of my book here, you'll see that I have our needle and thread poking out of the sewing station. We'll see this middle sewing station. We're going to ignore that one. We're going to jump over it and go to this sewing station right here. Second last. Take our needle and thread, poke that through. So we're making a really long simple stitch, double than what we've done before. Pull that nice and tight. We'll flip over. And now we see that the thread is poking out of this sewing station here. We're going to go to this last hole, grab our needle and thread, poke through. And again, I got to find that right angle. There we are. Making one simple stitch on the top here, pulling that nice and tight. This is our second last stitch. We're now on the inside of our book. We're going to bridge this gap between this last sewing station. My light's a little funky here, sorry friends. Between this last sewing station and the one next to it to put a simple stitch right over top. Take my needle and thread and pull. All right. So now you'll see that all 1, 2, 3 stitches are complete on the inside of my book. 1, 2, and 3. And then on the outside of my book, I'll have 4 stitches once I complete this last stitch here to bridge the gap between this sewing station and the middle. So we'll take our needle and thread, and for our last stitch, we're going to go in through that center sewing station. Okay. So on the front, you should have 1, 2, 3, 4 stitches. Mine are a little wobbly. I'm going to tighten these up. So on the inside I'm just gonna undo that tail. I'm gonna pull my stitches to try to get it really nice and taut. I'm gonna do that by kind of like lifting up each stitch and pulling to make it really nice and flat on the inside and really nice and flat on the front cover. All right, flip. Now our binding is almost done. What we need to do is tie. But before you tie, I just want to show you something real important here. All right, let me get this a little bit situated. Okay, so here is our center stitch right here. So, and sorry, the red ended up being a bit distracting, but notice how both of our tails are to one side of the center stitch. We want one tail to be to the left and one tail to be to the right of the center stitch. So I'm going to take my needle and thread and pull it underneath. And so now notice how I have a tail here, and then my center stitch sits on top. I can take my finger and set that right on top. I'm gonna pop over to the main cam too. So one thread on one side, one thread on the other, and then my center stitch sits on top of that, okay? That's perfect. We want to take either end and pull like a plus sign, kind of tight, but not too tight. This thread is very strong. You can take your needle off so you don't poke yourself. Mine fell off. And from here, we are going to tie. I usually like to double knot to make sure that my tie is going to be nice and strong. So I'm just going to give that a simple knot. I'll pop down on the book cam. So just crisscross and knot, crisscross and knot. And then some binders like to leave a tail, maybe for a bookmark if you prefer. You can put some beads on the end or do something fun with it. Other binders prefer to cut the excess off. I would just suggest that you don't cut too close to the knot. This is a handmade book, so if ever you need to, perhaps it'll be well loved, and if ever you need to rebind, it's always nice to add a little bit of a tail at the end so that you can reutilize the thread. So I like to put about like a finger's width extra, and then I'll cut right here. It's up to you. Sometimes folks will take it and make a little bow. But I like to leave a little bit excess so that you can tell it's been handmade. Oops. All right. I'm going to take my book clips off. And there you have it, one side of your do-a-do book. Ta-da! Nothing crazy, pretty simple. Any questions, comments, concerns? No? Yeah. Again, sorry if I go too slow or too fast. Feel free to let me know. If you need something repeated or say like, okay, I know this part already. So here is our 5-hole pamphlet stitch, single signature binding. We're going to do the same now to the back book or the front book, either or. So you'll need your second set of threads. For some reason, I lost my blue thread. Where did it go? I'll find it. But what you're going to do is you'll grab your second book block, your text block, You'll set that into your other valley fold here. Starting to look like a finished book, which is neat. You'll notice before we get started that the inside paper is a little bit smaller than the cover. I did it on purpose to make sure that the paper wouldn't pop out of the covers. You'll also notice that the paper kind of staircases a bit. See how it comes to a point. That just happens when you stack papers, stack folios together into a signature. That's going to happen naturally because each one sits on top of each other. What you can do if you really don't like that look is after we're done completing the book, you can take a sharp razor, like an X-Acto knife, and cut that off. You could try with scissors. Sometimes it's not as great. Here at Book Arts, we have some antique guillotine cutters, so we can just chop it right off. So if you come to visit us too, feel free to bring your book and we can do that for you too. But just a little finishing touch. Okay. Well, first, before I find my lost thread, is I'm going to take my book and I will utilize our book clips again and clip that together. Again, clipping to the back page. Here and on the back. We'll clip that. Same thing here. On the back. Clip. There we go. Now we are going to bind this last folio or this last signature. Really sad about my blue thread. I don't know where it went. All right, bear with me for a second. I'm going to grab some extra thread. But in the meantime, what you can do is take your ruler or your paper ruler that I provided and mark where your 5 sewing stations will be. From this part, if you have some good muscle memory, you can basically finish this up on your own, but I will definitely go through step by step. Feel free to work independently and ask me questions. I'll definitely, go through each step. Try not to be too annoying about it. In the meantime, I'm going to find my thread. Here it was. I think I got attached to my apron. Okay. So, let's see. Yeah, do that. All right, I'm going back to the book cam. And I'll just be making this book, dictating as I go. So, one mark at 4 inches, one at 1 inch, one at 7 inches. Again, making these marks on the center crease. One at 2.5, and one at 5.5. Like I said before, feel free to experiment with the sizes in between your sewing stations if you prefer. You can do it now or you can do it later with some other books. All right. I'm going to grab my awl. And since I'm right-handed, I'm going to flip my book. I like to start with the center sewing station, the awl in the palm of my hand here, clasping around like a little T-Rex arm. And push through. You'll see the point of the awls here. Sometimes you can go all the way through. I don't like to go too far to make that hole too large. Go back. Sewing station 1. There we go. 2, 3, 4, and 5. Something I maybe didn't say earlier was I like to hold my book like this flat on the table because I feel like I can get the hole really nicely in line with the spine. Sometimes if you end up with a hole like almost on the top or the back of your book, your binding isn't going to look nice and straight. but it takes practice as a bookbinder. Right. It's become a bit cumbersome now with this extra book on the back. So I'm going to take my needle and thread now, and I'll thread the needle again, leaving a little bit of a tail. This is about, I don't know, 3-4 inches or so. I'm going to take it, give it a nice tug. And then I like to twist, get that waxed linen thread to stick together. Okay. So now my needle and thread are prepped. I'll start on the inside of my book here. Gonna go in through that center sewing station and pull out through the cover of my book. Gonna pull the needle and thread until I have a little tail on the inside. I'll use the opposite clip this time and clip my thread underneath just to hold that in place. There's nothing worse than getting halfway through your binding and then it all coming undone. All right. Then on the front here, again, choose either side, doesn't matter. Choose this side. I think I did that this last time too. So the sewing station directly next to that center sewing station, we're going to take our needle and thread and poke through. This will create one simple stitch on the cover of the book. So right here, between middle and second to the end. On the inside of my book now, I have my middle thread sticking out, clamped underneath that tail, and then I have this long piece of thread with my needle popping out of the sewing station here. We're going to go to the last sewing station in the row and form another simple stitch on the inside. Pull. We'll flip to the cover now, and we're going to bridge this gap between the last sewing station and the second to last here. I'm just going to form a simple stitch by going through that hole and finding the path of the punched ball. Let's see, where is it? There we go. Okay. Now I have my needle and thread sticking out of that hole that we already had gone through. We're going to skip the center and form one long simple stitch by going through this sewing station here. Second to last on the opposite side. Pull through. Then we have one long simple stitch. We'll go to our cover again. Let's pay attention to this last little sewing station. We're going to go through that hole. Again, finding the proper little channel. The way I punched the hole through. There we go. Make that stitch. Ooh. All right. Again, we'll do our last simple stitch on the inside of our book, bridging this gap between the last sewing station and the one next to it. Pull that nice and tight. And then for our final stitch, we're going to bridge this gap here between the sewing station that our needle and thread's coming out of and the center station there. Poke through. Pull. So now we have 1, 2, 3, 4 stitches on our spine. Open up to 1, 2, 3 stitches. And again, remember, we can take that tail out from under the clip. Same thing happened where I have my center stitch separate from my 2 tails. I'm just going to take my needle, go underneath that center stitch. So now I have one tail on the top, one tail on the bottom, my center stitch rests on top of those. I'm showing you with my nail there so you can see that it's on top. I'm going to pull nice and tight. You might end up still with a little bit of wobbliness, so I'm just going to go back through and make sure that all my stitches are nice and taut. You might, like me, accidentally undo some of your fine stitch work. Try not to make that happen. There we go. Just pull that a little tighter. If you were a better binder than me while you were working on it and they were nice and taut all the way through, nice job. Okay. Take my needle off and we'll give this a double knot. 1 and 2. There we go. I'm gonna take my scissors, leave a little bit of a tail there. You can always do something with this extra thread too, maybe sew a button or a very tiny book. We like to be resourceful here at Book Arts. Take my book clips off because my book is now properly bound. Fold that up. Sometimes I like to use my bone folder to give that a nice little crease to smooth it all down. And there you have it. There's our little Do I Do Sweetheart bound book. So you can keep both sides to yourself. Have a friend right on the other side. One left brain, one right brain, sort of, I don't know, ramblings for yourself. How'd it go? Any questions? Kristen, Carol, anybody?
No questions. It was good. I like
Do you know what you're going to do with your book?
Nope, not yet. I'll wait till it comes to me.
Nice. Carol, how about you? Do you know what you're going to do with your book? How'd your stitching go? Yeah, okay, no worries. Well, let's see. Oh, perfect. And we finished with a little bit of time to spare.
Nice. Impressive.
Yeah, I don't know. Let's see. What am I going to do with this book? Over time, too, you'll notice it's a little floppy. Over time, if you set some book weights on it, like even just some like dictionary or some thick books that you have at home, that'll help to make it rest a bit, too. Oh, thanks, Carol. I see that you popped something in the chat box. Thank you. That was fun. I'll be taking more classes. Oh, wonderful. I hope you join us. And I hope your little helper in the background will join us, too. We have some kids' classes, too. Cool. Well, thank you both very much. Again, I'll be sending this as a recording, and you have all in your bone folder. And if you wanted to make some more books at home, you can make books really out of anything. We sell specialty binding threads and papers and things here, including materials to make your own hardcover books. But you can always make books with junk mail or any sort of random thread. If you get like a shirt from the mall and it comes with an extra button and thread in it, and you probably won't ever use that to fix your shirt, consider that bookmaking material. So there's a whole bunch of inspiration that you can find around you. You can even use that to embellish your book here, maybe add a little button closure. So feel free to also post on the socials and tag us with what you come up with and use your book for. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It was a lot of fun.
Ready? Bye.
Bye.